every one of us to do our part. I'm not going to claim to be some savior coming from on high to save us. It doesn't work that way. If we're going to be saved, it is going to be because we save ourselves. We have become a nation of sheep in this country. And a nation of sheep is what breeds a government of wolves. So it's up to us to look inside and say, how are we going to step up and do our part in this? And that's why we're here. To ask you for your help tomorrow night. Every one of your voices and votes at that Iowa caucus counts as the equivalent of 1 million people. Think about that. In shaping who the next president is. If I win the Iowa caucus, I'm your next president. If I'm your next president, we get done the things I told you we're going to get done. Starting with shutting down that deep state. And you know what? I think we're going to win the Iowa caucus tomorrow. I think we're going to win a massive. We have 390 of these events. That's more than all the other candidates' campaigns combined. And you know, we enjoy this. This is what gives me my energy. We get up at 6 a.m., we finish at 11 p.m., rinse and repeat. We're running on a 24-hour schedule, and we have been for a long time. Been to more pizza ranches than has been my diet. I used to eat the pizza, and I went from the deep dish was the best kind of pizza ranch. Thin crust, not quite as good. Now we're on the salad bar. Out of Miss Iowa, when we leave here, we're going to New Hampshire on Tuesday morning. We're planning to stay here through the end of the night on Monday, because I think we're going to have a lot to celebrate on Monday night. Yeah, that's right. Oh, we're going to come back to the general. Absolutely. If you get the pizza, we're going to be here. Oh, absolutely. I miss this too much. But in all seriousness, guys, we're in this for a reason. We're going to stop at nothing. And our parents came to this country, and they taught us to work hard. You get ahead through your own hard work and your own commitment and your own dedication, and you don't let anybody stand in your way. And you know what? You're free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That's how we do things in the United States of America. It's how I've done well in school. It's how I got ahead in my businesses. It's how I'm running this race, and it's how I'm going to lead this country. And so if you all do your part, we're going to do ours to make sure, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, to make sure that our country's best days are actually still ahead of us. Thank you for coming out today. God bless you and your families. And God bless our United States of America. We will not stop until we get this done. So give a poor round of applause for something. You don't have to
It's so cool. We have been here for the past 10, 12 months now, and so many of you have become dear friends over the course of this process. And that's so amazing, and we're so grateful for that. That is why we are in this. Vivek and I, a year ago, Vivek came to me and he said, I am worried for our 2 children. I'm worried for the future of this country. And he said what most wives don't expect to hear from their husband. He said, I have to run for president. And we're going to fix it. And that's a pretty weird thing for anyone, but especially for us. We had a 7-month-old and a 3-year-old at the time. So why are we doing this? We are doing this for them. We're doing this for these guys. It's because we have to do this, or else this amazing country that we have gotten so many wonderful things from, that all of us in this room have been able to accomplish so much in, is at risk. Those ideas are at risk today. And that is so scary. I was thinking, a little bit about what tomorrow is, other than the caucus day. And the other thing is that it is Martin Luther King Day. And we think about it, what he accomplished, what has been accomplished in the years since he marched on Washington. Since that speech where he said, I dream of a day when my 4 children are judged not on the color of their skin, but on their content of their characters. Exactly. All of us know it, and it means something to each of us. Because that idea is so central to the idea of what we are doing here today. The idea that with free speech and a true democratic process, we can make the most radical changes in this country. And, why do I think that this is the guy to do it? Well, we met when he was in law school. I was in med school. Aside from being at the top of his class at Yale Law School, he was also one of the few conservatives. And he had a job the entire time while he was in school. And he was working and investing in medicines. And what he realized from that process is that the pharmaceutical industry is extremely corrupt. Sounds familiar, right? And he decided right out of law school that he had to do something to fix it. He could not just sit around. He needed to start a company and fix this problem. And that's just what he did, or at least he did his part. He started a company, Roivant, which almost exactly a decade ago, just in that short period of time, they have already had 5 FDA-approved drugs. Most of the drug companies, the drugs take too long to develop, it costs too much, and they have an incentive in keeping us on these medications for the rest of our lives, because that's how they keep getting money. Well, one of the drugs that his company developed is for children who were born basically without an immune system. And with a one-time therapy, these kids who would have otherwise died at the age of 2, most of them can go on to lead normal lives. Once he was CEO of this company, he started seeing other problems. He started seeing how companies like BlackRock and State Street try to intervene not just in how our companies work, but in how our democracies work. They tell CEOs that they have to have opinions on DEI issues. They tell you who they're allowed to hire. They try to tell them how much they have to put aside for climate change. They try to go through the back door of our democratic process and make decisions for us. And Vivek thought it was a problem. He said, this is bad for capitalism, but it's mostly bad for democracy. This should be decided at the ballot box by voters, not by some guy in Manhattan who's deciding what we need to be doing in our country. So he wrote a book about it, but he didn't just stop there. It bothered him so much that he stepped down as CEO of the company he founded and started a new company so that we had an option. We started Strive. Now it's already the leading competitor, the anti-DEI ESG competitor to BlackRock and State Street in Davenport. Now you might be seeing a common thread with these industries. These are the FDA, the SEC. These are the agencies, the most highly regulated industries, and they also happen to be some of the most corrupt. And what he realized is that by getting rid of the bureaucracy, getting out of the corruption, that is how we make change. And so when he came to me a year ago, he said, Apurva, I'm seeing a different problem in our country now. Our children are growing up in a country where they will not have faith in their government, where they will not be sure if the war that they're being sent to is for their good or someone else's good. They are not sure. There is a 25% recruitment deficit today in our military. Imagine what it will be as our debt goes on, as our disaffection from the love of this country, as our patriotism goes down further. We can't let this happen. And the only way to do it is by going and becoming President of the United States. And you might be wondering, why straight to president? Well, because there was no one else who was willing to say we need to get rid of the entire FBI. There was no one else who was saying we need to get rid of 75% of the bureaucracy. There was no one else who was uniting us along the ideas that all of us share as Americans, not as Republicans or Democrats. I don't know about you guys, but I've been pretty disillusioned with the Republicans just as much as the Democrats. We needed someone who could really attract a next generation of voters, who is willing to put in the work and work harder than anyone else has in history. And that is why I know that this will be the man who will be president.
We'll open this up and we'll take questions together and have an open conversation right here. I'll try to give you the mic since you're right up here.
I've been wondering this all through this campaign, and I want to thank you guys. You've been incredible for Iowa. I've seen you 2 times now, but how do we guarantee fair elections?
Yes.
I have so many friends that say, my vote doesn't count. I'm not going to voting booth. My vote doesn't count. And after 2020, does any of our votes count? So I need to know, how are we going to guarantee fair elections?
Sure. So actually, most of what I've told you I'm going to do in the campaign trail, we talked today about shutting down the deep state of those agencies. A core part of my priority report alluded to it as well is we'll use our own military to secure our own borders. These are the things I can do for you as your next president. I'll go straight down the list, and we should talk more about the border. But I don't make promises I can't keep. But the one legislative promise I will make, the one thing I get done through Congress in the first year, will be to secure our elections in this country. It's the top of my legislative agenda. If we don't do that, the rest of it doesn't matter. The rest of it literally does not matter unless we do that. So here's the basic proposal on it. I will unite this country. I don't think it should be a Democrat idea or a Republican idea or a black idea or a white idea. Here's my pledge to the entire nation. I'm not running to lead a political party. I'm running to lead a nation. That if we get this done, then I'm done complaining about election integrity or stolen elections. Here's what we need, though, to do that. Single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday with paper ballots, government-issued voter ID to match the voter file, and yes, English as the sole language that appears on a ballot. Basic. Common sense. It's really controversial. Hey, you guys, most Democrats in this country, forget the media, not the ones in the media, not the ones who are in the political machine, but most people at home who might actually have voted for other Democratic candidates in the presidential election, they say, yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. Taiwan just had elections. They did it in a much similar way. It's not complicated. Now, the fact that that is controversial tells you what's going on. There's a deeper agenda at work here. This relates to our border policies, which I was going to come to. It is a long-standing plan of the Democratic Party for the last 10 years to change the composition of our electorate, including the people here who are here illegally, to change electoral outcomes. They basically said that 10 years ago, though today if you say it, they have a new word they attach to it to call it, the right says call it a great replacement theory, so then it's a conspiracy theory. It's actually just been this basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform. And so as we secure our elections in that way, at the same time, if we're actually willing to not just build the wall, but to use our own military to secure our own border, end federal funding for these sanctuary cities, end birthright citizenship for the kids of illegals. It does not apply to them. We have the conviction to do it, even though I'm the only Republican in this race to tell you that I will. If we do make these basic changes, we've gone a quantum leap forward to getting our country back. We have elections we can trust and believe in. We're a nation that has borders. A nation without borders is not a nation. And we have a country with 3 branches of government that's accountable to the people, rather than the 4th branch of government, the deep state that's running the show today. Those are 3 basic things I'll get done for you as your next president. And if we do that, I think we're going to get that done in the first 18 months in office. Most of that will get done in the first 6 months in office. This is stuff of reviving a nation that's lost its way. And I think it's going to take somebody outside of the traditional Republican versus Democrat tug of war. Frankly, the Republicans aren't as bad as the Democrats, but they're pretty bad themselves with respect to prioritizing any of the agenda that I've laid out for you. And so we are using the Republican Party as a vehicle to advance a pro-American agenda that most Americans, I think literally, quite literally, most Americans, 80+% of Americans are actually behind. Which means I can deliver you a landslide election in 2024, this year, akin to what Ronald Reagan delivered in 1980. That's my accountability to you. If you all make me your next president, make us your nominee, my accountability to you this November is to deliver you a landslide like what Ronald Reagan did about 44 years ago. And you know what? For this election, that's required. Because a landslide minus some shenanigans is still a victory. And so that gets to the question of, okay, I'm going to do that when I get to office, so what about this election? That's why this cannot be a 50.1 election. This has to be a moral mandate that will reunite this country. It is a requirement for us to have a country left at all this year. Now, I want to put a fine point on that. We are skating on thin ice right now as a nation. I am worried about what this year has in store. We get to the new year turn this year. I wasn't the guy sending, happy emoji text messages, Happy New Year. Because I'm very worried about this year. I'm worried about the election. I'm worried about the next few months. And I know we have a lot of supporters in this room. I'm grateful to the work you're putting in for us between now and tomorrow. As Steve asked you to do, I'm going to reinforce. Talk to 10 people who aren't in this room about what we're talking about right now. Bring that out to the Iowa caucus, too. And I want to tell you, especially for your friends who might be going in a different direction, America First patriots who care about this country, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes. And I'm going to ask you to open their eyes, too. To see that this system will not let Donald J. Trump get anywhere near that White House again. I have defended against this unconstitutional assault against him at every step. Even this past week, I filed an amicus brief with the U.S. Supreme Court, laying out the legal arguments for why they need to overrule Colorado's disastrous ruling to keep him off the ballot. Because it's the right thing to do for this country. And frankly, in that conference, that his own team is going to make that argument. And I think the Supreme Court needs to have the best arguments in front of it to make sure we do the right thing for this country. But at a certain point, we've got to acknowledge they're selling us the rope today that they will use to hang us tomorrow. And we cannot fall into that trap. They right now, even before you get to the election, here's what they want to do. Narrow this to a two-horse race between Donald Trump and a puppet who they can control. Eliminate Trump from contention one way or another. And then trot in their puppet into the White House. That's the game hiding in plain sight. The very people who are paying to keep Donald Trump off the ballot for those lawsuits are literally the ones who are among the largest donors to Nikki Haley, propping her up as well, which the media is trying to do as well. It's the truth. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a realist. These are just facts. So we can't fall for that trick. We got to skate to where the puck is going. So to your friends in this community, here in Scott County and beyond, tell them, are we going to get to a year from now, if we stay on this track, are we going to see what happens and look back at this year and say we were shocked by what happened? Or are we going to say we should have seen it coming, and how did we walk into that trap? Last time it was a man-made pandemic and a rigged election. This time these people will stop at nothing, and I mean nothing at this point, to keep this man away from office. So we have to do what's right for our country. Our America First movement, it didn't begin in 2016. It started in 1776. And we owe it to our founding fathers and to this country to make sure that we get through this election and that we do have another 250 years and then some still left in us. And that's why I'm here. Yeah, the future of America first. Let's go to our future rather than to our past, to take our movement to the next level, to make sure our movement outlives the last 8 years, to live another 250 years more. And that's how, if you spread that message across this state, I'm confident fellow patriots across this country and across this state will do the right thing tomorrow night. And that's how we're going to get our country back. And so thank you. We get to office, we get that done. Thank you very much. So I'll repeat your question. I just put them up with a wire, so I'll just repeat it. It's good to see you.
As president, what would you do about the situation with foreign countries buying our farmland?
Oh, great point.
Or the shell companies that are set up to help them?
Let's specifically about China. I mean, let's just call out the elephant in the room. It's China. It's not Canada. Canada's not the problem. You know, it's not, it's not England. Yeah, it's not, China has a long-run view of the United States. They're playing 500-year games. They're playing long-run chess, and we sit here playing checkers. It's the truth. Our electric grid is more vulnerable than it ever has been. 60 Chinese transformers are in our own electric grid, and there are increasing good reasons to think that they're controllable even from outside of our own boundaries. If they can take out our electric grid with that, or with a super EMP, electromagnetic pulse attack, that could kill a good portion of this country over the course of 6 months with food shortages and drug shortages. And I want people to understand what that means. Electricity, gone. Planes out in the sky. Gas stations don't work. insulin can't be refrigerated. That's what we're talking about here. So there's one element of that. One of the things that I've said is the CCP should not be allowed to buy land in this country, period. And if I'm sitting across the table from Xi Jinping, that's a pretty simple conversation. You will not buy land in this country. You will not donate to universities in this country. You won't turn our companies into lobbying pawns. We're going to hold you accountable for unleashing hell on the world with the COVID-19 pandemic, because fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You don't hold them accountable, you can expect far worse in the future. We're going to kick you out of the WTO until you're playing by the same set of rules, which they are not today. And you give a president with a spine that actually does it. Then Xi Jinping actually is in a tougher spot than we are. The only thing worse than the inflation is actually what they're experiencing, which is deflation, which is loss of economic growth and stagnation, because he shot themselves in the foot with the year of zero COVID policies that was really just about him holding on to his third term. So now's our moment actually to play a little bit of hardball with China, to be able to get out of what we need to get, but we're not doing it for China right now because we're scared. Why are we scared? Because we depend on them for our modern way of life, to be the extra buyer of a unit of land. Well, is it a little bit easier to sell a piece of land if China's an extra bid in that auction? Sure. But that's not the right answer for this country. We shouldn't want the CCP owning land in our country. We're dependent on China for our pharmaceuticals. 95% of our pharmaceuticals come from China. The same country that unleashed hell on the world with the pandemic. The same country that is lacing our illegal pharmaceutical supply chain with fentanyl. That's the same country. What do you think they're going to do to our legal pharmaceutical supply chain? In an area of conflict. God forbid. The same country that also provides most of our military equipment. Think about that. Think about how twisted that is. The F-35 jets of this country are made in China. That's insane, right? If we're in a conflict with China, you think they're going to keep providing those F-35 jets? I don't think so. The CEO, I think, which contractor was it? It was Raytheon. I think their CEO was recently saying we need to play nice with China because we depend on them for our military supplies. But there's a deeper question. Why? Maybe we shouldn't depend on China for our military supplies. And so my foreign policy is clear. Agree or not, I'm going to be clear about what it is. I'll keep us out of World War III. I'll declare economic independence from communist China. And then we will use our own national defense spending to actually defend our own homeland. And if that sounds radical to you, then you should vote for somebody else. Because I'm not your guy. That's exactly how I'm going to lead this country. It sounds radical to the mainstream media. They're certainly not voting for me. They're doing everything they can to shut me out. But we're not going to let them get away with that, because Iowa goes first for a reason. You want to stick it to the mainstream, and one reason we can actually get a bunch of people to do the right thing for this country. You want to stick it to that mainstream media, the most censored candidate in this race. Stick it to them tomorrow night and get a bunch of people to show up to that Iowa caucus, and let's force the truth down to their throats.
What are you going to do about the biased news system in this country that is promoting lies, misrepresenting us? If you listen to Tucker Carlson, who was in the system, he explains it quite well, but we've experienced this too. It's so biased, people who don't think that it's not biased are just completely controlled.
I don't think it's biased. I think it's totally made up, actually. Literally, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Is it a bias to say that the lab leak was not the origin of the pandemic? I don't know what to call it. That's not a bias. That's just a lie. And not only is it not a lie, it's just a lie. If you speak the truth, it's actually the people who they censor the most aren't the ones who lie, it's the ones who speak the truth. The Trump-Russia collusion hoax that they made up, was that media bias? That was literally made up, like they concocted it out of a Hillary Clinton opposition research document that we had to be force-fed for years. There was an impeachment inquiry for the first 2 years of Trump's presidency because of that made-up media lie that the media espoused. The same media that did that on the eve of the last election. Stolen in so many ways. The Hunter Biden laptop story on the eve of the last election, the most damning piece of information about one of two major presidential candidates that he might be compromised by foreign governments, including ones that we're forking more money to right now. Ukraine, which paid that bribe. I mean, that's what this is about. See, the Hunter Biden story wasn't the story of yesterday, it's the story of our future, because that's actually what got us into Ukraine. We're told on the eve of the last election that it was made up Russian disinformation, when in fact, it was disinformation propagated and made up by our own news media. So the Trump-Russian collusion hoax, it never was. The origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. How our money is being spent in Ukraine right now. The truth of what happened on January 6th. The truth of the National Transgender Shooter Manifesto that was never released. We could go all day long for every one of those lies. Where is the accountability? And so the best I'm going to do, because I don't think we want a government that then interferes with that. Because then the government then just captures people who tell the truth and take the Tuckers of the world and lock them up. I mean, that's what that looks like if you open that door of the government. We don't want to go there. I think the right answer is, at least I'm doing the best I can in this campaign. Facing off with the media at every step of the way. Actually have the ability to speak truth in the face of the way they frame those questions, from CNN to the Washington Post, to everybody, to NBC News, to everybody else in between. We're going to show up and actually speak the truth through a free and open internet. So even when they shut me out of that media, we're going straight to the people. Thank God for the guys like Elon Musk who bought Twitter, turned it into X, actually have free speech, able to reach people directly. That's our last best bastion of protecting against the media bias to fabrication. But that's why I'm such a hardliner on tolerating not 1 inch of internet censorship by the government or anybody else in this country. And that's what they're now trying to do, right? Over the last couple of years, what have you seen? The deep state is using tech companies to censor speech through the back door that the government could not censor through the front door under the Constitution. And the reason this is so important is that's the last best check that we do have on lying media in this country. And so what I've said is, anytime a government, we saw Elon did this at Twitter, right? He exposed the Twitter files. We saw how much the government was literally just using Twitter as a pawn to accomplish its own agenda. What I've said is that the Twitter files, I'm going to release the state action files. Anytime any government bureaucrat in the last 5 years has pressured a private actor, a private company, a tech company, or a bank, or otherwise, to do something through the back door that could not be done through the front door, we're going to publish it. We're going to put that sunlight as a disinfectant for everybody to see it. And every time there was a bureaucrat that was pushing it, we're actually going to hold them accountable, because that's a breakage of the rule of law. We will hold them accountable to the fullest extent of the rule of law. So that's how we're going to protect a free and open internet as a check on the media. So one of the things I've done in this campaign is I host a podcast every week, at least till the final phase of the race. I said I'm going to continue that as your next president. Actually, we used to have fireside chats where the president would communicate directly with the people. So now that's actually disappeared in the last couple of cycles of U.S. presidents. We need to bring back a government that's actually transparent with the people again. That's open with the people again. Government that tells the truth to the people again. And I think that's what we need in this country, is somebody at least at the top that acknowledges, here's all the ways you've been lied to, here's the truth about the Jeffrey Epstein client list, the truth about how our money is being spent in Ukraine, the truth of what really happened on January 6th. Whatever it was, just tell us. Here's all the video footage, rather than serially worrying about what the public can or can't see. And I think once you have a government that trusts the people with the truth, that's our last best chance of then having maybe, just maybe, people who begin to have some trust in their government again, too. So thank you, sir. I appreciate that question. We'll go right back to it.
Hi. Firstly, two things. Thank you for being so entertaining this entire campaign trail, from your first debate where you raised your hand to telling Chris Christie to go eat a sandwich. You have always been super entertaining. So thank you for never being bored.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Number two, weird question.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on making Social Security optional for people like me and my generation who know we're never going to see a cent of that money that's being stolen from us?
So it's not a weird question at all. Let me tell you how I would like to see this done. Would I have set up Social Security back in the era where it was set up? No, I wouldn't have. It was a terrible idea. FDR's, beginnings of you could say many original sins, but that was certainly one of them. Lyndon Johnson was original sin part 2 with the Great Society. But we are where we are, and so I'm not going to be a president who comes and whines about what came before me. I'm accountable to you as your next president, regardless of the mistakes that came before. So here's what I'm going to do for you on Social Security. First of all, here's how we address the national debt problem without cutting Social Security or Medicare. I'm going to give you the punchline here. Get the oil and natural gas out from underneath our ground and sell it. That buys down $8 trillion of our national debt right there. So $34 trillion minus 8, you're at 26. Now, over time, avoid repeating the same mistakes of fighting foreign wars that did not advance our interests. $7 trillion was Iraq and Afghanistan. 20 years later, the Taliban is still in charge. Iraq is a more broken country than when we showed up. Don't repeat those same mistakes in places like Ukraine. Now, that's another $7 trillion that actually at least avoids being rolled over. Then we cut 75% of the federal bureaucrats across the federal bureaucracy, as I said earlier we would do. Our national debt problem is behind us without touching Social Security and Medicare and veterans benefits. So that's what I call America first rather than America last, which is what most Republicans want. Cut your benefits, cut your veterans benefits, cut your Social Security, fork over more money so some kleptocrat in Ukraine can buy a bigger house. No. So that's how we do it, at least for addressing the national debt without touching Social Security and Medicare for the prior generation that's actually collecting it. Now to your question. What if I told you that we could actually go in the other direction? I can tell you that we could increase Social Security benefits without even increasing our national debt in the process. This would be interesting. Am I a magician? No. But I do know something, I do know some basics about this thing we call math, actually. 4-letter word that they don't teach our kids in school anymore. Sure, they treat math like a 4-letter word. They don't teach it in elementary school. They should try it. So here's a simple fact. If 40 plus years ago, we had allowed the Social Security Trust Fund to be invested in the same way that your financial advisor would tell you to invest your 401k account, diversify it, put it in stocks and bonds and treasuries. Today, the average person collecting $1,800 a month in Social Security benefits would be collecting close to $18,000 per month in Social Security benefits. Imagine that check in the mailbox. We could have done that without adding to the national debt. It's just government malpractice that we didn't actually get there. And so what I've laid out here is actually a plan for your generation to not only collect it, to collect it at a better scale than even the prior generation is right now. And we do that without eroding trust in the system we have now, because right now we're in an emergency measure where it is true, the money you're paying in isn't even going into that trust fund quite yet. It's going to pay people who need to get it out right now. So I'd love to tell you your solution would work, except that would leave our seniors who have paid into it for years holding the bag, and that's not fair. I think our country crumbles in the process. As I said, we're skating on thin ice already. We can't do that right now. But we can correct for the mistakes of the past, where part of that then gets, the part that doesn't need to go to that and swept to do that can at least be invested in the markets. I said over a 40 to 50 year period when you're collecting it, that's the power of compounding returns that we've denied the American people because of idiotic government bureaucrats. There's no other explanation other than malpractice that made those mistakes. We will not make those same mistakes again. And that's going to take a CEO in the White House. Somebody coming from the outside. Somebody who understands the why, that isn't just shepherded, managed by the deep state. The best way to know that is I'm not managed for better or worse in this campaign, right? And I think a lot of the ideas that I've rolled out at the time that we espoused them, they weren't particularly popular. Some of them polled poorly. My position on Ukraine, I was the first person to offer a reasonable path to end the Ukraine war. That was unpopular at the time I offered it. Now the cows are coming home, right? It's now become mainstreamed in the Republican Party. Actually, here in Iowa, about 7 months ago, unveiled what I think is a policy to revive civic identity of the next generation. I think every high school senior should have to pass the same civics test that every immigrant has to pass in order to become a voting citizen of this country. When I first rolled it out, it wasn't all that popular. In fact, my team begged me, can we poll this before you put it out? I said, sure. The poll results came back. He said, it's not good. I said, we're still going ahead. Because it's the right thing for the country. And I think that's what we need. Is we need leaders that don't just feed people what they want to hear on Social Security or any other question. If you care about somebody, you tell them the truth. If you care about yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. And as your next president, for better or worse, I'm going to give you the truth. And I think that's how we get this country back. And so thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thoughtful question. We'll go to maybe last two questions right here, and then we'll wrap. I can't leave you hanging. You've got a good hat. Maybe the last three questions. We'll go here, 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 and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you for bringing up education. It's really one of the biggest things that I worry about. We're currently ranked 1 in the nation for incarceration, about 18 for high school graduation. So I'm just wondering what scale of we have to help change diversity.
Sure, I mean, absolutely. This country, first of all, it's the background that we enjoyed. I lived the American dream because this country allowed us the opportunity to be the kid of Indian immigrants who came to this country with no money, to go on to found multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. The educational foundation we were given is what allowed us to do that. I went to a relatively poor public school, 1st through 8th grade. My dad faced layoffs at the GE plant in Evendale, Ohio, under Jack Welch's tenure, yet he still scrambled. He went to night school, actually, to get a law degree while keeping a full-time job. Actually, that's where probably I got it from somebody watching my dad do it under tough conditions, to still allow us to go to a better private school, St. Xavier in Cincinnati, where I went to high school, to then put me on a path to then get an education at some of the best universities, or some of the best universities. They're not the same places they were as even when I went there. It's kind of sad to watch. But what do we want to do about education? I'll give you the punchline. The U.S. Department of Education, that uses our taxpayer money to foist radical racial and gender ideologies onto our schools, saying you don't get that money unless you adopt these ideologies. We're going to shut it down and return the $80 billion back to parents across this country who deserve to choose where they send their kids to school. That's how we're going to do the first step. Then, you know what? How the public schools compete with private schools? Get rid of the teachers' unions. Allow the public schools to actually compete against private and charter schools. Now let's get some transparency. If you're going to teach it in the classroom, put it on the internet. And if you don't want to put it on the internet, you shouldn't be teaching it in the classroom. And then revive that civic education that we're missing in this country. So I have much more to say, but the bare bones of how we'll get this started as your U.S. president starts with the head of the state. Shut down the Department of Education, return the money to the people. And as part of this plan, once, for a tiny sliver of that, we will be able to put 3 armed security guards in every school across this country to make sure what happened in Paris never happens again. Thank you. You had a question?
So, kind of a 3-part question. I was a reluctant Trump voter until the first time I heard you speak, sir, and you're amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying
My
that.
2 concerns with Trump, the greatest thing he did was the Supreme Court.
Yes, it was.
The worst thing he did was the people he surrounded himself with.
Yes.
So my question is, do you have everybody in mind for resume,
Yes.
Supreme Court, and cabinet?
Thank you. It's a great question. So in this race, I'm the only candidate who has published our entire list of potential Supreme Court nominees, and even a longer list of federal judge appointees. It's one of the most important things you're going to get out of the president. So months ago, this is many months ago, is carefully vetted. I mean, we have the top constitutionalists and originalists that we have on that list. We're going to do the same thing at some point in the coming months with respect to not only cabinet appointments, but who's going to run the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. It's like the HR branch of the federal government. It's important, actually, because they're responsible for staffing the rest. Or the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, it's like the CFO. When I'm talking about zero-based budgeting, these plumbing positions are actually arguably even more important than many of the cabinet positions. So we have short lists for every one of them. A lot of them are going to come from outside the government. I think it's going to be a good thing. The people who are habituated in those norms in Washington, D.C. are not the right kind of people. And it's one thing if you make a mistake. I'm not a guy who sits here and Monday morning quarterbacks Donald Trump. The other candidates do that. I think it's lazy. And you know what? Maybe if I were in this position or anyone else were in this position, we would have made some of those same mistakes. But if you don't learn from your mistakes, then we have a problem. And right now, as of right now in this race, I'm the only person who can tell you that I will not make Nikki Haley my vice president. Or anybody else whose philosophy of foreign warfare needs to be relegated to the dustbins of history. And so, yes, I do think it's going to take somebody with fresh legs. I give Trump the credit. He rolled that log over in some ways, and we saw what crawled out of that swamp. I'm bringing the pesticide, okay? That's what it's going to take. Fire 75% of the bureaucrats and clear the deck. then you can bring outsiders in. So we have a short list for each of them. With the vice president, we have a short list right now. We're narrowing it down. I can tell you who isn't going to be, but who would be a model of the kind of person.
I don't expect it really today, but...
No, I'll give you a model of the kind of person I'd want in that seat would be Elon Musk. Competence, the ability to make deep cuts without apologizing for I talk from time to time. It's the right philosophy. He's the one who pushes me on the fact that says, we're not cutting enough, actually. 75% is not enough. That's the kind of criticism I want. Right? And in South Africa, so he can't do it. He's South African. My friend Steve King, he left, but Steve King has one of my favorite tweets. What did he say? Is three of the greatest African Americans: Clarence Thomas, Thomas Sowell, and Elon Musk. I scrolled through Steve King's Twitter last night and I saw that. But I think that's the model of competence and the ability to make deep cuts through the federal bureaucracy. Right now, the vice president, who do you have? You have Kamala Harris, who's in charge of AI policy. I could not think of a greater danger to the future of humanity than to put somebody who can't even spell AI into the office of AI policy. But we're going to bring competence to this. And I'll say this in rapid. They're going to say, we'll go to Dubuque from here. So if you guys want to join us, come on over to your last event of the night. But I'm having too much fun with you guys. I think you stayed longer than we're supposed to. But what I'll tell you is this. Tomorrow night's big. Tomorrow night is critical to the future of our country. And if we get this right tomorrow, and I'm asking every one of you, and I really want you to take this seriously, every one of you, tonight and into tomorrow morning, at least 10 people who couldn't be here tonight, who aren't in this room, tell them what we talked about, bring them out to the Iowa caucus. People like yourself, sir, who are in the position of maybe go in a different direction. Open their eyes to make sure we don't fall into the trap that's been laid for us. And if you all do that, Apoorva and I will do ours to make sure that we don't have to be this nation in decline anymore. We don't have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. I think the truth is, we still can be a nation in our ascent. Maybe even the early stages of our ascent. Maybe we're not even at base camp, on our way still to that shining city on a hill. That country where we will look our kids in the eye and mean it. That you get ahead not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That the American dream, it isn't alive and well today, it's alive and on life support, but it can be alive and well again. And so if you all do your part, we're going to do ours. And may our nation's best days actually still be ahead of us. Thank you for coming today, guys. God bless you. And the God bless our United States of America. Thank you all. I appreciate it. We will not stop. I appreciate it.